Hello everyone and welcome back to SGTV. So it is Apprentice Week currently, so we thought it'd be a good idea to get some people on the show who know a bit about apprentices. So today we have a returning guest in Mark Allison from Apprentice 1-1. So for those of you who don't know, Mark has been on the show before talking about Apprentice 1-1, which is a brilliant organisation he's set up to help apprentices. So if you're there, Mark, say hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Ben. Nice to be back on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
It's good to have you back, mate. We've also got Paul Chaffers and Terri Monroe from NAPIT joining us. Hello, both of you over there. How you doing?
Hi, good, thanks. You?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Hiya, Ben. Hiya, Mark.
It's good to have you back. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. It's nice to be asked back. It's good to see you. To be fair, at the moment, it's good to see anybody.
Yeah, no, it's kind of quite annoying out there at the minute. It's coming up to that time of year where the daylight's starting to come back and you want to be going out and doing things and cracking on with jobs, and you're just staring at walls and talking to your cat more and kind of going a little bit loopy. Or maybe that's just me.
No, I agree.
We'll get started. I'm going to aim this question at you, Mark. So just a quick question. How's Apprentice 1-1 been going since we last spoke?
Well, it's been going better than I would like, to be honest, because I would prefer for nobody to need to use it. But yeah, it's really busy. Lots and lots of apprentices have been getting in touch for all sorts of support, from help with training and employment, and employers as well, trying to find information about the grants and support that is available to them. So yeah, it's just kind of exploded massively, and I wish that wasn't the case, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask as well, has the fluctuation of restrictions, because we've been in and out of tiers and lockdowns and things like that, has that affected Apprentice 1-1 much?
Not directly in what we're kind of doing, but definitely in relation to people getting in touch. So when the lockdowns seem to kick in, I notice every single time that the number of apprentices reaching out for some kind of help, and it's usually with training actually more than employment. So they're missing out on time at college and they're asking for help with certain modules to prepare for AM2 or filling in some assignments they've got because they haven't got access to the lecturers. So I do notice that definitely on the DMs and messages coming through the website.
Yeah.
So that's something that I pick up on as this coronavirus seems to change week to week.
What sort of advice are you having to give then if they're not got that access to sort of physical training?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, when this all first started, I was directing people off to loads of the YouTube content. So there's loads of people all across the industry, some of them very famous, some of them not so much. And there's all that stuff there. But, you know, as this is now getting on for a year, there's only so much of that you can do to kind of try and help people with the training. You know, I'm starting to get the opinion myself that we maybe need to look at something a bit more drastic. And we're speaking with some of the apprentices in the little community that we've got. They're sort of feeling that as well, that there would maybe like some sort of extension to their training so they can feel properly qualified and experienced. And for example, there's a couple who've been in touch through the course of today who were saying they're preparing for exams to be put forward into their AM2, but they don't feel in a position to do that as such. They've missed out on too much training, too much time in college, and they don't want to lose their place at college. They don't want to lose their employment, so they kind of feel a bit stuck and lacking in support. So I'm just trying the best I can to offer a bit of that. We're doing something through Apprentice 1-1 for Apprentice Week as well, and that's the aim of what we're working on. So, you know, it's just listening to the apprentices, giving them somewhere to vent, if you like, as well. I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the solutions to a lot of these problems are, to be honest, but it's just somewhere for them to come and chat.
Yeah, you've had some help from our lovely friends here at NAPIT giving you a bit of a hand as well, haven't you?
Definitely. Yeah, I've spoken with Terri a few times in the past, and she's been good enough to share Apprentice 1-1 across NAPIT social media and push that message out into their members. I'm one of the members of NAPIT and proud to be so. And that's one of the reasons why that they get behind things like this, not just from myself, but from all sorts of other people. And I certainly really appreciate that help. And I know the apprentices do as well.
How's it affected your plans going forward? Because I know you started this, you started this at the start of lockdown, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said last time I came on that there's no real grand plan to any of this. None of it's really sort of planned at all. It's just kind of led itself along as the situation's evolved. So, you know, it's frustrating that it's still happening, but it's no one's fault, is it? It's just the nature of what we're all trying to get through. So I don't have any kind of plan in place as to what this might become or where it's going. I'm just kind of moving with people. And one of the things that's happened most recently is a lot of electricians have been stepping forward, offering tools and equipment to apprentices. So I did a post on Instagram, maybe it's 4 or 5 weeks ago now, of some apprentices who didn't have any equipment to get back into work. And other electricians were jumping up through Apprentice One-to-One, offering sets of snips and other bits and pieces. And then a gentleman, I will reference him, Eddie Clemens, stepped up with a multifunction tester he no longer needed and wanted to give that to an apprentice. And off the back of that, we've now had, I think it's 10 to 12 MFTs been donated in just to pass on to other apprentices. So to see that happening has been incredible. That's one of the great things I get to see every day, is good people just trying to help each other. So that's really nice.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't seen any of that, but it's quite nice that you said that. That's definitely something that needs to be done, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was unexpected for me. It was kind of Eddie who jumped forward with that idea, and he didn't want to do it on social media. He just wanted to pass it on, but I told him I couldn't pick anyone out to receive something like that, so we would have to do it in that way, and that's kind of prompted other people. And I'll be DMs now after we finish this from people who are offering equipment into apprentices, and you know, that's fantastic to have a small part in that, just passing stuff around people. You know, it's unused test equipment, unused tools, and people just handing it out for free. You know, it's really nice.
No, good stuff. Paul and Terry, similar question to you, Per. So has the fluctuation of restrictions had much of an impact for you guys?
I mean, at the start, obviously, construction and working at people's homes in the first lockdown closed everything down, didn't it? But then a few weeks in, obviously, it was all allowed, obviously, with COVID measures met. So for us, nothing's really stopped. We've still been providing the support for our members. And we did a survey just after the first lockdown, really, to see the impact that COVID was having on our members. And I think about 71% of them came back and said that they were getting jobs or contracts deferred because of COVID. So like Mark said, this is obviously then having an effect on those people who are working, getting apprentices on to help them work. If they're not getting work, then they're not really needing that assistance either. So yeah, we've seen it come up and down, but yeah, it's still going ahead, and we're just still open, providing all the support we can for our members this time.
Just doing what you can.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses and organisations, they're always going to have goals set for the next 12 months or 18 months or however long that time frame may be. So I'm guessing for you at NAPIT, you're probably going to have something in place. But I mean, what's happened to those goals as your view going forward now changed? Because you don't know none of us know what's going to happen with restrictions and tiers and in and outs and all that kind of thing. So has that been much of an obstacle?
It's been a nightmare, to be honest with you, Ben. My main role within NAPIT is the events. I'm the technical events manager, so I look after all of the technical intent that NAPIT delivers at these seminars and events, as well as numerous other things I do. And I work hand in hand with Terri at organising these events. And at the start of, or sort of the end of last year, we set, the end of the year prior to last year, we set out and we got a number of leading manufacturers on board with ourselves, including Scolmore, to come and join us on a sort of like about 18, I think it was about 18 road shows we had planned. And at those events, there was going to be leading seminars given. There's usually, on one of the NAPIT's JPAL committee members, there's usually Frank Broughty or Richard Townsend with me. So the apprentices, students, and our members that attend those events get one-on-one. You know, they can have their questions answered. They can talk to the manufacturing experts in the room. Trying to plan those things takes a long time. Then you've got all the logistics of how we get there, the hotels, the bookings, etc. So when the first lockdown came, we had to postpone everything, and then poor old Terri had to rearrange it all, and she had me on the phone saying, well, don't do this, do this, do that. And we worked together to rearrange it. And then all of a sudden, this COVID thing went on a lot further than what we've seen before. I mean, I'm probably the oldest one on the call, and the only pandemic I can remember is the SARS disease. And the reason I remember that is I used to play ice hockey, and we were going to Toronto, and our flights got cancelled because of the SARS disease. But it only sort of lasted a couple of weeks. It affected a few countries. They shut all the flights down and they dealt with it. So when this COVID come along, I thought, I've seen this before. We'll be out of this in a few weeks. And then it went on and on, and we're still going on now. So yeah, a real problem. And this is what is affecting us getting into the colleges and into the places and being able to give the advice and the support to our members such as Mark.
So is it more sort of planning what you can and almost having backup plan after backup plan as well?
Well, we went to a webinar Wednesday thing. It sort of drove me crazy, if I'm honest with you. It was like Groundhog Day. I would spend 2 or 3 days getting all the slides together and doing a bit of research and getting the graphic designers to put the PowerPoints together. Then I'd deliver it, and then we'd start that process again, ready for the next Wednesday. And I think, did we do about 15 of those in a row, didn't we, Terry?
Yeah, did a lot.
So we went online, and as part of that, we was able to then record those webinars and offer them to colleges.
Okay. Are they on the NAPIT website as well?
They are for our NAPIT members, yes, and we're sort of just discussing getting them out to the wider industry via socials as we speak. So watch this space. Within the next few weeks, we should start seeing extracts and snippets. The trouble is with this, and Mark will be familiar with it because he does stuff on social media, is people take things out of content. So they hear a comment and they say, oh, Paul Chaffers said that at NAPIT, and this is the view, and it all gets, Chinese whispers. You've got to be at these events to hear all the questions and hear the balance of the discussion, and to be able to get to understand people's attitudes and the way they deal with things. And unfortunately, we're living in this sort of environment now where people are very tuned into social media. They only hear what they want to hear, and that's the side of it I don't like. So I would sooner go face to face down to a college, and I did last year at this time. I was at Havering College supporting National Apprentice Week. I witnessed all the conduit bending competitions and that, and then I've done a code breaker seminar. The issue is you've got to ask the guys in the room who you're pitching it at, because they're all different levels. So if you get students at level 1 and 2, and it was a nightmare. I went down there with the presentations we write and make it up electricians and engineers such as Mark there, and we talk about, we use the regulations and the language in the regulations. You start talking to a student, you say, oh, you've got to install these devices and you've got to make sure you achieve selectivity, and then you go, you don't know what selectivity means, do you? Well, selectivity used to be called discrimination. Oh, damn, you don't know what that means either. So it's a real difficult job for a technical presenter such as myself. I've got to ask which audience I've got, and we do this right across the board because we do high-level training to local authorities, and you don't know who you've got in the room. It could be, you could have electrical inspectors in the room. Chances are you haven't. So you've always got to say, what level have I got? Have I got any electricians? Are you students? Do you understand what this means? Have you heard of this term? You do that at the front end of the presentation, then you know how to tailor your advice. So yes, sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I'm trying to sort of get across to you that whilst we can put in virtual things to fill the gaps, you can't beat that face-to-face meeting with the guys. And it works okay with 4 of us like this, but you try and do a Zoom call with a bunch of students, and they've got different attitudes as well. And Mark's probably seen this in the work he does. You get some that are really good and they would be a credit to any organisations, and you get other ones that have been, forced into taking a certain route at school or whatever, and they're going through the motions. So when you're there hands-on, you can see the ones that want the help, and you can give that to them, and the ones that are just you're wasting your time with, and that sounds a bit sort of callous. You want to try and help everybody, but sometimes you just can't. If you've got somebody who really doesn't want to do the trade, trying to get them to understand the sort of responsibilities and the requirements behind the regulations is just near on impossible.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think even so with the masks, I know we're wearing them for protection, but I think you're losing that the body language and being able to communicate with someone based on their expressions. You're not losing things in translation. And it's like you say, if you're going into a college or a school or somewhere like that, and you've got multiple people in the room, all with different ideas of what becoming an electrician might be, it's not until you sort of speak to that person face to face and come to their level where you might make that sort of connection to them that they might think, oh, actually, this is a career I could go in. Where if you've sent an email to this student saying become an electrician, it might just go over their head. And I think you're right. We do need that face-to-face interaction, really, and that's where you really do connect with people and make that impression and help them. Like you say, if there's something they're unsure of, and this is something I say to my daughter because she's doing home learning, and she's like, "Oh, I could do this all the time," but I'm saying what you're not learning is the different methods. So if you've got a problem and your teacher says, this is how you'd solve that problem, you might not understand that, and that be the only one solution you're seeing on a screen. And it's not until you put your hand up and ask that person, there's other methods of explaining something, which is what you get from that face-to-face interaction. So, yeah.
Electrical contracting is very much like that, and Mark could be able to back me up on that. You could get two different guys going to design a building, and one guy would say, well, I'm going to do this in metal containment, and these are my justifications, and I'm going to use single insulated cables, and I'm going to do it this way. And another guy could go in from a totally different angle and say, do you know what? I'm not going to worry about the metal containment. I've only got a couple of circuits over there. I'm going to run them in armoured cables. Both wiring systems would have adequate mechanical protection. Who's right and who's wrong? So being an apprentice, you've got to have their peers be able to explain to them the different reasons and the different justifications to why we choose approaches. And one thing that I was taught as an apprentice was, suck up all the different ideas. Don't just say, oh, that's the best one and that's the way I'm going to learn. Learn all the different ways. And then throughout your life on different sites and different jobs, you can think, well, I usually do it this way, but actually that bloke told me that. And in this application, it'll work. And that's what the people are missing out on if you don't get that one-to-one time with them.
Do you think that could have an impact going forward on the abilities of young, apprentices and electricians in the future?
It is a concern. It is a concern. I mean, this call's not all about me, but it's easy to make reference to I was one of the lucky ones when I left school. It was about 30 years ago. There was large companies doing structured apprenticeships that lasted typically for about 4 years. And I applied to Vosper Thornycross, which is shipyards, British Railways Board and British Gas. And I got offered 2 apprenticeships. One was British Gas and one was British Rail. When all the plumbers were making all the money about 20 years ago, I sometimes regretted that I didn't take the British Gas route. But I went down the railway route and it gave me a really good sort of foundation in life for the work that I do now. So, in a roundabout way, it worked out. Are those types of apprenticeships being offered anymore? I don't believe they are. So, really, this is where the work that Mark does is pinnacle to trying to get people matched and the right sort of peers to guide them along the way so that they can suck up every bit of knowledge and information they can, because you don't really learn it from a book. You learn it when you're on site and from people, and that's that part of the apprenticeships that seem to be missing. When I visited the guys down at Havering College, sure, they've got the same college lecturer and he's doing his best to show how to bend a bit of conduit or how to do this, but it's not the same as being out on site and being in different environments where you might have different risks and different concerns and all of those things to learn. So yeah, I think going forward, will we have the same level of tradesmen as what we've currently got in today's market? I don't think we will. And it's not just about the construction industry. All the industries are like that. I spent quite a lot of time in the ship repair industry, and the apprentices are just not coming through. So there's a handful of guys like myself and older that can understand how to do sort of very technical jobs, how to line up generators and shafts and use measuring instruments, and they tend to use lasers more these days. But is that being taught? No, it's not. It's the basics that are getting taught now, and that's the problem. Anything that goes a little bit past the basics involves risk, doesn't it, Mark? Let's bring Mark in. He would understand what I'm saying here. teaching somebody how to rewire a house as opposed to teaching them how to do, preventative maintenance in a factory is two different things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, you need a whole different skill set for all those things. And you make a good point about the quality of apprenticeships at the moment. That's one of the key things I've been trying to raise awareness on. And, it's a difficult one to solve. Some of it comes down to funding and having smaller employers, especially taking on apprentices in the numbers that they used to in the past. Certainly when I first started out, most of the local, not just electrical contractors, but any kind of small plumbing business or joiners and such, they'd have apprentices. And it doesn't seem to happen anymore. And I think some of that is to do with funding that's coming in through government, and some of it is perhaps that prices are at a level where people don't feel they can afford to take on apprentices anymore. And it's such a shame because we need more of those people today than perhaps we ever did. Certainly in the electrical industry, you think of all the different aspects of things that are popping up now to do with electric vehicles and heating in homes that's probably going to be moving over to electrical systems of some sort as we get rid of gas boilers. We're going to need a highly skilled workforce, and I'd like to see the apprenticeship system used to help build that. I think it'd be the best way we could tackle those challenges that are coming up in the next few years.
Mark, what support is there for an employer to have an apprentice? Is there any kind of funding to take one on?
It's quite complicated, and it's difficult to find the information. Actually, the government are dealing with more pressing matters. We need to be realistic with that. But traditionally, you get a grant when you start off an apprentice who's aged between 16 and 18, and that would be £1,000 payment that you would receive for employing them at the outset. Because of the coronavirus pandemic, the government introduced some extra policy where if you were employing apprentices who were aged under 25, so aged between 18 and 25, you could claim an extra £2,000, and over 25s it was £1,500. Now, a lot of the people getting in touch with Apprentice One-to-One are older apprentices actually, and they're finding it really difficult to find employment because obviously the grant system's weighted towards those younger people because that is government policy at the moment to get young people back into work. But I don't think that's particularly fair, to be honest. I think if we're going to have a grant system in place for apprentices, it shouldn't be affected by your age, because there's going to be a lot of people, especially now, looking to retrain into other industries. And, if employers have got an apprentice who's maybe 18 years old and they know they can get essentially £3,000 payment for taking them on, or you've got someone who's 25 and you can only get £1,500 already before they're even interviewing, there's a strong carrot there to take on the younger person. And I think that needs looking at.
Has it been difficult to match up employers with apprentices currently going through all this?
Well, no, we've mainly every single employer who's come in, we've actually managed to place apprentices with. Usually, it's a case of I will see an employer pop a job into the LinkedIn group, because that tends to be where most of those people are. And then through the little database we've got, we can kind of match them up with some apprentices who are in those areas. And then we'll put a post out onto Instagram, because that's where a lot of the apprentices seem to be on our stories. They will see it and then just join the people together for them to chat and discuss and see if it's a good matchup. I mean, and with Paul mentioning about social media and communicating on a virtual basis, he's dead right that electricians seem pretty bad at it sometimes. We fall out over the silliest things, and some of these arguments end up being through wives' tale after wives' tale, and it ends up in colossal argument. The apprentices set a great example because they can all communicate effectively through social media without falling out, supporting each other. I see that with Apprentice One-to-One. Everyone who's getting in touch, asking for help, they're all engaged, they're all helping and supporting each other. They're not just chatting away with me, they're actually in the background talking with each other as well. And I think as electricians, we could maybe learn something from those guys doing that. There's lessons for us there as well.
Yeah, so we're all old dinosaurs who get grumpy with phones and social media.
Well, it seems to be. I was in a discussion around hot tubs the other day, and you won't believe some of the things people start saying to each other. And we're all just trying to learn at the end of the day. But I think sometimes you get that stuck in your own chain of thought. And social media is quite blunt, isn't it? It takes that personal aspect to it. Like we were saying, when you're face to face with someone, you get a better feeling of a conversation. Sometimes when you're stood behind a phone screen and a keyboard, you can just say something that might appear blunt that doesn't mean to be blunt, if you like.
Yes. Don't talk about hot tubs, Mark. That's a hot subject at the moment of mine. Recently wrote an article in the NAPIT magazine, and it was published in Professional Electrician. But you only get a certain permitted amount of word length. So maybe anybody who's watching this video could understand the process behind it. So in that 1,000 words, time you put an introduction and a conclusion, it doesn't give you a lot of time in the middle. So I based my article on the placement of hot tubs in relation to the power source, external influences, IP codes, etc., like that. Didn't touch earthing systems. Every 2 minutes, people were saying, do you need an earth rod or not? The article was nothing to do with earthing. So if you're one of those people that are wondering whether you need a rod or not, it wasn't my article that covered it. But this is exactly what we're saying. Rather than somebody stepping back and saying, I'm going to pick up the phone and ask NAPIT, we've got a technical outline. People read these comments online, it gets twisted about, and then the wrong advice is being put out there. And that's my concern with this, with apprentices coming into the world, is that they look for accurate advice. There's a lot of so-called experts on these different platforms and channels and whatever. They need to really go back to the the trade bodies and the people that are able to stand by their comments. So anything that gets published from NAPIT's point of view, we have a technical committee that goes over it with a fine-tooth comb. We have a number of guys that sit on sort of high-level committees, including the Wire and Regs Committee. I'm the deputy chair of Subcommittee B. So when we put an article out there, it doesn't go out there without a number of checks to make sure the accuracy is spot on. So just sort of it's a reminder to people that if they read something online, make sure they've got the full facts behind the story before they start making comments, you know. So
yeah, I think a lot of the young people are sort of becoming quite savvy to that now. I think, as you say, people getting more involved on all kind of social media platforms. You can take things out of context, you can read things incorrectly, and they're becoming more wise to using fact checks and those kind of sites and things like that. So if they've got that sort of perception about just general things, then you'd think that they'd probably be using the same sort of logic to their learning, going to places like the IET and NAPIT and everywhere.
It's very difficult to do the work that we do as electricians because every site is different and every user is different. And the Wire and Regs does cover that. We have a section in there, I think it's Appendix 5, where we have our external influences and conditions and categories of external conditions. So when you're working on a site, if there's somebody there that's got a disability, you have to take that into account. That's an external influence you take into account. And likewise, if you was working on site and there was a different type of clientele on site. So some of these rental properties, it may influence the way that you code a certain situation because of the type of user that's there. So it's very difficult to give advice. People often say, well, what code is that? And for that actual application, it could be one thing, but in the house next door, it could be another. It could be the same observation, but taking into account all the different external influences, it could be different. And that is what's so difficult about the job that we do at NAPIT, is trying to educate people that it's not about everything being in black and white. It's about the electricians and the inspectors using engineering judgment and applying the skills that they've learned over their lifetime, really, to make the right decision. And like I said, 10 minutes ago, quite often you can have several ways of doing something and they can all be right. It doesn't mean that one person's right or the other, as long as all of the characteristics have been assessed and all of the fundamental principles and Wire and Regs have been met. You can't knock it, really. So I take with a pinch of salt what's being said on the socials. It can be a very good platform if it's used in the right way. Let's try and keep it positive.
Absolutely, yeah. Mark, I want to come back to you. Have you seen much of an increase in the amount of apprentices looking for support from you?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly, as they've become more aware of what I'm trying to do. Definitely, Instagram is the main place where apprentices are getting in touch. And I can have 100 DMs quite easily every day. Again, through on Twitter, and then contact through the website. Nick Bundy gave us a mention on his video the other day, and I think within about an hour, I had over 200 emails coming in from the Apprentice One-to-One website, but also from my own business website. And I didn't know what the hell was going on, actually. It wasn't until Nick messaged and said, I've dropped a video mentioning you might want to check it out, that I kind of joined the dots there. So yeah, there's loads of people all of the time getting in touch, and as it's moved along and people become more aware of it, definitely, and not just people asking for new help. There's other apprentices who we have helped who are keeping in touch, and they're the messages I really enjoy seeing. So we'll get pictures of them at work with the new employers and some of the stuff they're doing. That's really good. It's not just a case of people asking, can you help me with this all the time. There is people consistently getting back and keeping in touch with me, so that's nice.
Yeah, I bet it's nice to see that sort of pride that they're taking, that they want to be showing you how they've progressed. I bet that can only be a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Speaking selfishly, I love that. People who found a benefit from something I've tried to do, and they've now got a job that they're enjoying. Some of these people back from the summer last year, and they're working now in £5 million smart homes, and they're sending me pictures of some of the work they've installed, and they're trimmed with the way the job's going. They're really grateful for the help they've had, and they're communicating still within the Apprentice One-to-One group, trying to help other people get the same thing. Because for all the people that we have managed to help, there's thousands actually more who are still waiting for that help. So that needs to be remembered, that some of the numbers, I think we're over 450 people now who we've managed to place back into work, but there's many times more that people who we haven't. So there's lots more people there who are waiting for that help than we've managed to provide. I don't want to try and make out that we're some kind of heroes to this kind of situation. We're not. The real heroes are the employers who are stepping forward, offering those work placements. They're really brave, actually. A lot of them are only small employers, small business owners, and they're getting in touch saying, we've seen what you're doing, where we would like to support that. We're going to push ourselves to employ people. We wouldn't normally have been looking to do this, certainly not while a coronavirus pandemic's going on. But we've got the funds, we've got the time, we want to do it. That's really nice to see as well. And those people deserve all the recognition.
Even so, then, Mark, without you doing what you're doing, they wouldn't be getting that connection in the first place. So I think you need to give yourself a bit more credit there.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think a lot of it might have naturally happened anyway. I don't know, but I've been pleased to do it. It's something, as we spoke the first time, I had a lot of free time on my hands. We'd stopped working, so I was looking for something to do. As things have moved on now, I'm back in the day job all of the time. And, a lot of what I do with Apprentice One-to-One is on an evening. So I'll be up till the early hours some days trying to catch up with people. I feel guilty if I leave them waiting for a response to a message. So, that's something I'm going to have to look at longer term if this is going to be something that carries on, is how that is managed, because I can't forever and a day be staying up till 2 a.m. getting back to people. And, hopefully there'll be an end to some of this anyway. That's kind of my hope, that we might get back to some more normal times. And just touching on again about some of the virtual learning, there's a number of apprentices who have issues with some of that. So, they're not very good at learning remotely. So whilst they've got the facility there to carry on with the training, and there's a number of them who've getting in touch, and they've got dyslexia, they've got other learning issues. And, for those people, it's a real struggle. And fortunately, there's people within the Apprentice One-to-One community who've come through similar things, and are lecturers themselves now, actually. So they're helping people in the background, and they deserve a lot of recognition as well, to give their free time to kind of put that into people, because it's not easy. I mean, we're all finding it difficult to work remotely. You imagine as a 16, 17-year-old where you've got dyslexia and you're already pushing yourself in the best way you can to build a career, and all of a sudden you've been told you've got to pass modules and take it all in from home. It's really, really difficult, and there's no easy solution to it. So, it's just trying to help as much as we can.
Yeah. Sort of brings me on to my next question. I want to put to you both at NAPIT. What support would you offer students or apprentices to help them understand the industry going forward once they've done their qualifications?
At NAPIT, we offer free student membership and free college membership, so that allows individual students to get access to NAPIT updates, news, on free events, on webinars. It also gives them access to our technical helpline. I mean, although obviously it's not a resource to be used to obviously help them through their exams or anything like that, they're not the teachers, but they have access to that all free as part of being a student member, which then gives them the right stepping stone when they are qualified to becoming full members with us. And then the free college membership was something that we introduced last year as we started working with more and more colleges. But that then allows the lecturer to have access to our information then pass it on to the students. So we have an online members portal which contains a lot of technical content, but that also then gives them access to our publications, our webinars hosted by Paul and the team. So it just opens up doors really to get the technical expertise that NAPIT can offer. Because obviously a lot of our guys at the top there have just been electricians themselves, so there's a lot of help there from those guys.
Does that include sort of career advice on the different paths you could take as an electrician?
We don't really offer per se the career advice. That's why we were so keen to support, obviously, Apprentice One-to-One. We'd always link back to the government, and I think we've got a page on our website which shows them how, obviously, to apply for apprenticeship by the Gov site, and as well our members if they wanted to employ an apprentice. But it's all like Mark said, it's very confusing. They have to go through various links, read a lot, and I think what Mark's done is just simplify that and make it a personal experience for both the employer and the apprentice. So yeah, it shouldn't be needed, but unfortunately it is, and it is helping at this time, I think.
Yeah. My next question, I suppose, it'd be good to get an answer from all of you on this, from your perspective, from where you are. Have you seen a drop-off of apprentices being employed throughout all of this?
I'll start with that one. Definitely, as certainly this latest lockdown's happened, it's been a bit of a struggle to try and find employers for the apprentices. We had a big push in the new year to try and get a few more employers, and we were successful in that. But since then, it's gone really quiet again. Trying to find people who have got active roles for apprentices to apply into is a battle. I keep going with posts across my social media channels, and other people are helping as well, who are far more industry famous than me, to just draw attention to that there is this group of people that we're aware of who are looking for work. But definitely, since the turn of the new year, I've noticed that there's been less opportunity for people to just apply into jobs in general.
I mean, the lockdown again might have had an impact on that as we've come back in. It's just constant, isn't it? So it's not.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you finding there's apprentices being let go throughout all this? They might be being taken on at the start of this or before this, and as a lot of businesses are struggling, they might have to just cut ties and let them go.
At the start of sort of in the summer last year, definitely that was going on. Pretty much now people are either out of work for a long term, or they're on long-term furlough, or they've managed to keep working. So it's not so much happening at the minute from my experience. People tend to be kind of in that routine now where their employees are still either going and they haven't really noticed the difference, or that they're on furlough at home. That seems to be the situation at present from what I'm seeing in Apprentice One-to-One.
If I suppose it's going to be the same. If you're on furlough, or even if you've been let go from your apprenticeship, you're almost in this forgotten zone of, you're in a space where you're not learning, you're not getting hands-on. And do you think is there much support out there for that kind of? Let's say for the person who's been let go, because like you say, if you're part of a membership scheme, there's a lot of support there. And you're probably going to get that through your employment. But if you're an apprentice who's been let go throughout all this, what sort of support do you think there is out there for them?
It's really difficult. I mean, there is the government tools that Terry mentioned, and you can get support with mental health and finance as well. There is places to go there, and they're on the Apprentice One-to-One website with links over to that, and I know they're on the NAPIT website as well. But generally speaking, there's not a great deal of support there. If you don't have an employer and you've lost your kind of college placement, there's a lot of people who are in that position. I mean, they did give an extension where you could keep your college position open if you'd lost employment because of all of this. But ultimately, the colleges make their money through having apprentices in and learning. And, that from things I'm hearing in Apprentice One-to-One, that hasn't been the case. There are people now who've gone into kind of paid education themselves, so they're taking courses in independent training centres rather than the more traditional apprenticeship route, just to try and get finished. So it is a problem. And the people who are on furlough as well, I mean, some of them have been on furlough now for coming up to it'll be a year, won't it? And they've not had access to the learning in the colleges, and they're still been presented with assignments and even exams now at home for them to complete, and to then go on to be put forward for AM2 and pass out as qualified electricians, because it's in the college's interest to get the people through the training so they can get payment for that training. And the employers aren't really involved in any of it because they've got the staff on furlough, and you've got the apprentices sat there who are saying, we've not been trained, we don't really know what we're doing, but we don't want to lose that employment, so we've got to carry on, if you like, But at the end of it, we're going to be supposedly be qualified, but without the ability to actually be electricians. Where do we stand in all of this? And that's something we're talking about on Apprentice One-to-One through the course of the apprenticeship week. We are speaking about that, and there's been it's not just one or two people. There's maybe 30 DMs on social media every day from apprentices in that situation, and they're having their college lectures cancelled every week, so they'll be expecting a 3-hour session of training, for example, virtually, and they'll get a message on the morning saying, sorry, we can't go ahead with that, go and research steel conduit bending, for example. And that's not a way to learn. People aren't being taught how to do their job correctly, and to then ask them to sit exams, I think it needs some more drastic action to that, and that really needs to be government led. There needs to be some funding put in place to enable the colleges to extend those training programs and not have the pressure on the apprentices. The apprentices seem open to that idea. I thought they'd be the ones resistant to that. They'd want to get finished. They'd want to be progressing as electricians, but I think it's got to the stage now where they're saying, actually, we don't feel competent. We don't feel like we're ready for this. We're quite happy to suffer the financial consequence of extending our training, but we need all the other parties involved in that to be wanting to do the same as well.
Yeah. Do you think that causes almost anxiety for the students for job security there?
Definitely. I mean, that's what a lot of them are saying. That they feel pressured into carrying on because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to lose their college places. So there is that pressure there. And I don't have the answers to these things. So I'm just kind of trying to talk about it and raise awareness of it, because I think there's a lot of people in the industry who don't realise this is going on. Certainly with some of the electricians I speak to on Instagram, every time they hear about it, there's kind of shock, and they don't accept that it's even real. It's only till they start speaking to some of the apprentices themselves. And there's been some Instagram famous people who've picked up on it and shared that on their stories. And, it's getting a bit more traction, and there is a bit more knowledge in the electrical community that this is going on. And, while the government have lots of other things to deal with, we've got to accept that what we are seeing is not really relevant to the grand scheme of things. It would be nice if there was some kind of plan put in place that was maybe led by Ofqual or the colleges themselves. I don't really know, but something needs to be done.
I suppose a lot of people now that with the seeing what's happening, and let's say an apprentice, they're not going to be earning a brilliant amount, but they'd probably know that once they're qualified and once they're through it all, they could be earning very well. But do you think that short term, knowing that they're going to be earning very little compared to, say, someone delivering for a delivery company or just a standard job, do you think that short term goal could be putting people off from actually getting into becoming an apprentice?
I'm speaking more generally. We definitely need to do better at attracting people into the industry. And you're right, if you're coming out of college or school and you can go and get a job where you can straight away be earning what's considered a reasonable salary, or to put yourself through an apprenticeship program, there is that aspect. But we do need to remember, if you're staying in education, if you go off to college or university, you're not getting paid for any of that. So you can end up very much indebted if you're going into university education. If you're going through an apprenticeship training program, there's a benefit to that. You are being taught, you've been educated, and you're being paid. So there is that factor to it. I think sometimes we need to be pushing that more into schools and into colleges, that you can have a great and rewarding career in construction in general, not just in the electrical industry. And there's not enough of that been done. And too often students, and my own kids, I speak for them, they kind of push towards sixth forms and university. My 23-year-old electrician son, he's come through my business, but he first off went into A-levels because that's kind of where the school directed him. It wasn't until I got in his ear and he realised he'd quite like to be an electrician that we ended up in the situation we are now. But I think that's quite common. I think schools should be doing more to put construction in front of the students.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. It's something I've mentioned a few times. I get told off for drowning on about it, but I couldn't agree more with you on that. Are you getting much support, Mark? Is there anything that you're getting support-wise for the services you provide?
Well, on the day-to-day basis of doing it all, it's me and a small group of other people. So I mean, there's Neil Bridgman, Ricky Howell, Sam McDougall and Craig O'Neill, who've been involved right from the very early days, and people within my business as well who help with the administration of it. But speaking of support from industry, there's NAPIT, who've shared what we're doing across the social media channels and offered their help. There's other manufacturers as well. I won't mention them being on a Scolmore podcast, but there's manufacturers who are helping with giveaways, and they're not just public, they're not just on social media. Some of it's in the background where they're just passing their products out into apprentices' hands to try and help in that way. I'm probably going to forget people if I start mentioning individuals, so I don't really want to go down that road. But yeah, there's been support there in spreading the message, if you like, rather than actually doing the day-to-day joining up with people.
Before we go, I wanted to ask, I'll ask this to both of you. So with the forthcoming Amendment 2 coming up, and obviously everything else that's going on, do you think it could be overwhelming for people, especially apprentices?
No, not really. Unfortunately, that's something you're going to have to get used to. If you come into the electrical industry, standards are changing all the time. The committees have to take account of innovation, new devices, things that are happening at a higher national level. So we have to implement changes, safety devices. We also have network issues in this country as the network gets older, as we put more load on them. Mark mentioned the way that things are going with, electric vehicles, etc. So things are moving all the time, and because there's an Amendment 2 coming, it's not ideal because we're going through this pandemic, but there's amendments every 2-3 years. There's something new to get to grips with, and that is part of the journey of being an electrician. You've got to constantly keep your CPD up together. If you want to do something where you don't have to do that, you need to take up painting and decorating, and that's not to be to put them guys down. Two of my brother-in-laws are excellent painter and decorators. They probably earn more money than most electricians, if I'm honest with you. But there's other trades out there that don't have to constantly keep going back to college. Unfortunately, electricity does kill people. And that's why there's a need for constant, staying on top of your game with the regulations and keeping your skills up together, which is where the competent person schemes come in, because the companies such as Mark's company are audited, on a regular basis to ensure that they're doing things correctly to the standards. So it's a bit of a blow every time somebody's got to buy a new book. I can appreciate that, but the actual getting of the grips with the changes, there's enough experts out there giving and offering advice. We certainly do to all of our members, right from when it's in a draft for public stage. We'll talk about what the proposed changes are, and then when the changes start to come into force, we'll do seminars when we can get back on the road, seminars, road shows, webinars. We'll update all of our publications with the latest advice. So it's not too hard to get the advice. Sometimes it does come at a small cost, though.
My final question for the episode. Obviously, we've talked about some negatives. I want to finish this one on a bit of a positive. So if I could get an answer from all three of you, that would be good. So I want to hear almost a success story that you've heard throughout of all of this with regards to an apprentice. So let's start with you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few through Apprentice 1-to-1. I mean, there was the gent I mentioned who's now working in £1 million smart homes. That's quite a nice one. But more generally speaking, it's the link up of these small employers that really have given me a lot of pride to see that they're coming forward to try and do that, because that's kind of the key message I'm trying to get out there, that we need to, as small employers, and I'm one of them, make those roles for apprentices. And to see that happening has been really quite good. And I think as we get to more normal times, if we can encourage that more, that would be brilliant. And there was an apprentice in particular who was 6 months away from finishing, and they got laid off. And within 2 days of getting in touch with Apprentice 1-to-1, we had them back in work. This was in August last year. They're now qualified as electricians, and they're actually been put forward to do the 2391 and work towards becoming a qualified supervisor within that organisation now. So they have a career path that we've kind of helped someone step into, and that's been a really nice thing to see. So amongst all the doom and gloom, there is some people finding new careers out of all of this, and I've been proud to be a small part of that.
That's a good one. How about you, Terry?
We don't have a connection like Mark does really with apprentices themselves, but I suppose just to leave it on a positive is obviously NAPIT are still here and we're still operating all from home and our services, and we offer excellent CPD and technical advice to any students who are looking for that. So they just need to check out our website and get the application filled in, and they can have access to all that for free. So yeah, that's just a positive thing.
Yeah, knowing that you guys are there, that's got to be a big thing. I know if it was me and I'm, you know, in the thick of it as an apprentice, and I know I've got someone like NAPIT who's there with the advice, that's got to mean something. How about you, Paul?
Well, similar to Terry, we don't really have that contact with the apprentices to get the individual stories. But where I could see this really working is we have a number of guys that are coming towards the end of their careers. They don't want to be crawling around loft spaces and chasing walls out. They've got a lot of skills to pass down. The young guys are coming through. They might have their qualification, but they haven't got the experience. So they need each other. And that's where, if any of our members, and we quite often, when I used to do the inspection some years ago, I used to go and see a lot of these guys and they'd say, oh, there's another amendment coming up. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay in the industry. There's a lot to get to grips with. But they've got 30, 40 years worth of experience to teach. So that's the goal, is getting those two to meet up so they can help each other. And, you know, we talked about the negatives of apprenticeships maybe not being as thorough as they used to be, but this is where they could really work, is where that final bit of training is done, where a young guy comes along, the guy who's getting towards the last sort of 5-10 years of his career can wind back and spend more time in the office and get the young guys out there on the road. He's giving the crucial support and the extra teaching they need, and they're giving the enthusiasm to the business, if you like. So I could see what Mark's doing there has been very positive to a lot of our members, especially the smaller sole traders that may need an extra hand and may need somebody who's more up together with the day-to-day way we operate. You know, everything's online now, isn't it? Even all of our test certificates, you know, we still have a number of members that, believe me, they order the pads and they're still using pens and papers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they might well benefit from a young kiddie coming through who's got those skills, and they can sort of train each other. So yeah, it's all good.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to have you all on. And I hope people out there watching have found this useful. Hopefully it's raised some kind of awareness to what is on offer out there in terms of support. You've got Apprentice 1-to-1, so please make sure you're heading over to Mark's website there, checking that out. Make sure you're heading over to NAPIT. There's plenty of support out there. So again, I want to thank you all for coming on. Hopefully we'll see you all next time. Please make sure you like, subscribe and hit the notification button below, and we'll see you next time.